Okay. Not sure exactly what happened. We're going to just take a minute or two here to see if we can get everyone on this new stream. The computer that we use, it completely locked up. So, oh wait, is it back on the old one? That's amazing. Can someone put in the comments if you can hear me okay, if this is working? Oh, good. Liz says we're back. Good. Okay. So I'm not sure where we got frozen, but we did spend some time praying over the requests. So let's move into our time of teaching, okay? So now as we prepare for today's teaching, please know that here at the Open Table, we desire that you will find faith among us, regardless of where your faith has taken you. We desire that you'll find hope among us, regardless of how much or how little you have right now. We desire that you'll find restoration among us, no matter where you've experienced brokenness. And we desire that you'll find love among us. Period. We will now have a few moments of silent worship, as is our Quaker tradition, and then we'll begin our time of teaching.
Luke 1, verse 1 through 23. Dedication to Theophilus. Since many have undertaken to compile a narrative about the events that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed on to us by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and servants of the word, I too decided as one having a grasp of everything from the start to write a well-ordered account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may have a firm grasp of the words in which you have been instructed. The birth of John the Baptist foretold. In the days of King Herod of Judea, there was a priest named Zachariah, who belonged to the priestly order of Abijah. His wife was descended from the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. Both of them were righteous before God, living blamelessly according to all the commandments and regulations of the Lord. But they had no children, because Elizabeth was barren, and both were getting on in years. Once, when he was serving as priest before God during his section's turn of duty, he was chosen by lot according to the custom of the priesthood to enter the sanctuary of the Lord to offer incense. Now, at that time of the incense offering, the whole assembly of the people were praying outside. Then there appeared to him an angel of the Lord, standing at the right side of the altar of incense. When Zacharias saw him, he was terrified, and fear overwhelmed him. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zachariah, for your prayer has been heard. Your wife, Elizabeth, will bear you a son, and you will name him John. You will have great joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great in the sight of the Lord. He must never drink wine or strong drink. Even before his birth, he will be filled with the Holy Spirit. He will turn many of the people of Israel to the Lord their God. With the spirit of the power of Elijah, he will go before him to turn the hearts of parents to their children and the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord." Zacharias said to the angel, "How can I know that this will happen? For I am an old man, and my wife is getting on in years." Then the angel replied, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and to bring you this good news. But now, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled in their time, you will become mute, unable to speak until the day these things occur." Meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah and wondering at his delay in the sanctuary. When he did come out, he was unable to speak to them, and they realized that he had seen a vision in the sanctuary. He kept motioning to them and remained unable to speak. When his time of service was ended, he returned to his home.
Good morning, Open Table friends. I'm coming to you from a different space in my home this morning for a couple of reasons. I just have not been feeling well. Not terrible, but not great. And so rather than go put on all the makeup and look nice and be in my fancy room, I just wanted to be comfortable this morning. So I hope you give me grace for that. I feel like Open Table friends, we can be more honest about these things. And I will be honest too, this teaching is difficult for me today, and I just didn't expect that. So as I was preparing, I just wanted to come to you feeling the way I feel now, rather than maybe trying to, again, pretend that everything feels great this morning at Open Table friends. Now, I know that's not a really encouraging way to start the day here. We're going to be talking about holding lots of emotions in together at the same time. So again, I'm hoping that there's grace for me here at Open Table friends to just come to you in the way that I feel in this moment right now. So we are starting our Advent series. Can you believe it? We are into Advent, and we are utilizing another really great Advent series from Sanctified Art. It's a really beautiful organization that creates these materials to be used at both during Lent and during Advent, and just a really great series that integrates art and teaching and all of these great things that we try to do at Open Table friends. So the theme this year is called A Weary World Rejoices. And I just think about how many of us may be feeling or carrying weariness with us right now, which is why I'm just so thankful that there's a series like this that exists and acknowledges that. And that's what we're going to be talking about, is where do we try to experience joy while also holding these feelings and struggles of weariness over different things in our lives. So what this series starts off by saying is that joy is often a companion to many other emotions. We can feel joy in addition to many other things at once: grief, anticipation, anxiety, excitement, disappointment, exhaustion, to just name a few. Perhaps many of us live with a myth that joy is not something we deserve, or that it is wholly out of reach for some of us. But our joy is rooted in the truth that we belong to God. And so they ask the question, can you tether yourself to that deep truth? You deserve to feel joy fully. The world needs your joy even if you are weary. Our joy is better when it is shared. The theme, of course, alludes to the line in a familiar Christmas hymn, O Holy Night, which has an interesting history. The song was originally written by a French poet who was an atheist, and the music was supplied by a Jewish composer. The hymn was later translated into English by an American Unitarian minister, and in the 1880s, it became a popular hymn for Christian abolitionists due to its justice-focused language. Like Mary's song, the hymn reminds us that justice and joy belong together. Sometimes our joy is an act of resistance. So this Advent, we will hold space for our weariness and our joy together. We will seek the thrill of hope in our hurting world. We will welcome joy even and especially if, like the prophet Isaiah, we cry out for comfort. In this weary world, may we find many ways to rejoice. So what's happened with our Sanctified Art series in the past when we've done them during Advent is they've been lectionary based, where there's readings from different scriptures and we create a meeting for worship based out of those teachings. But this year, the series is narrative driven about the story of, so we're going to follow the story of the birth of Jesus, and starting off with Zechariah and Elizabeth. So that's going to be interwoven into the story of Mary and Joseph and Jesus. So as Advent begins, I think it's important that we acknowledge our weariness, our grief, our rage, our helplessness, all of those maybe emotions we don't necessarily associate with Advent, that we're carrying these, but we at the same time can affirm that we were also made for joy. Joy is designed to live in a house of other emotions, like I said at the beginning. So as we are starting our teaching, you heard the story from Luke chapter 1. We're starting with Zechariah and Elizabeth. They have battled infertility and have lived many years steadfast in their faith. Perhaps they feel the weight of hopes and dreams that have been unattained, or in some ways they feel like maybe they had to let go of. So the angel comes to Zechariah with a promise of good news, but Zechariah cannot fully receive it. Who can identify with that, right? And so he's cast into silence for the duration of Elizabeth's pregnancy. Sometimes weariness, I think, if we're being honest, hardens us, right? Hardens us from the joy, from living fully, because, and I don't judge anybody. I've experienced this myself, right? We've had hard journeys, and grief and trauma have left scars on so many of us. This is how we are coming to each other this morning at Open Table Friends, carrying our own scars and pain and hurt and disappointments and traumas together. But I think we can do this and acknowledge, we can acknowledge that we hold all of these things, and these things maybe, again, have disillusioned us to faith and to hope and to joy. But like the psalmist says, let us ask how long and plead for God to restore joy to us. And I think about how when it comes to these stories around Advent, around Christmas season, we can't avoid birth narratives, right? About John or about Jesus. It is all wrapped up in this birth narrative. But I think it's important, and this is what the study says, which is so ironic that I get to be the one to talk about this, that there is a lot of weariness, grief, and trauma related to childbearing that people carry around with them. And acknowledging our pain can allow us to recognize where joy and where God may also be present alongside our grief. And so I just thought it was ironic that, again, I had told Mark weeks ago, I would take the first season of Advent not even knowing what this series was going to be about. Because this week I've had 3 conversations, and I haven't had a conversation about this topic in years, but yet this week alone I had 3 conversations with 3 different people who will remain unnamed because their story is not my story to tell. But these conversations were either about the choice to not have children or not try for children, or about desperately trying to have children and not being able to conceive. And so at some point, somebody had asked me, one of these people had asked me, and again, like I said, it's been years since I've had this conversation, so how crazy and ironic that it came up this week, how I handled my own infertility journey and how I made peace. And so I've been pondering that question a lot in these last few days. So in many ways, I told this person, I feel like I made peace a long time ago. But then sometimes, like this week in this teaching, I'm surprised because I find pain and grief popping up again when I thought maybe that had all been settled. And so, and I think about, I was not somebody who was told I would never have children. No doctor ever told me that. I knew that there were issues and there were struggles, but I had never been told it was never going to happen. It just never did. So when I was reading about this in this week's teaching, I was just kind of annoyed. Like, it's an extremely vulnerable topic. I like to think I'm over it. I don't want to share about it. I don't want to talk about it. And I realize it's because there's still pain and grief and trauma associated with that. And so, apparently this all came up for a reason. I was meant to do this teaching. I had these conversations, and I can't get away from birth stories, even if, again, we want to get away from them in some ways, but that it all comes back to holding space for both joy and weariness and grief and pain, but also thankfulness and gratitude, like all of these emotions, which reminds me that, again, at Open Table, we've been very cognizant about allowing people to hold space for all of the emotions that they need to hold. And I think that's really important, especially in this Advent season, because I think about around pregnancy and childbearing. For every happy, healthy baby, there are families who have lost pregnancies and children. For every happy birth announcement, there are women and families longing to desperately make that same announcement. For every baby shower, there are women and families grieving, yet having to throw on a happy face and attend because they love that person who's celebrating. And people struggling with, it's not that people struggling with infertility can't be happy for other people, right? But I just think about how we as a society and even lots of church spaces don't hold space for those dealing with loss or hardship around childbirth. We just want happy stories and happy endings, right? We want to wrap everything up in a happy little bow. I have listened to and I've referenced this podcast before about a woman. It was around the issue of abortion, but it was a woman who had gone to this, she was a very devout Christian who was part of a very active evangelical church and had 2 difficult pregnancies where she knew before she had the baby that she had lost the child. The child was not going to survive. And how, again, for a while, her church loved to hear her testimony about choosing not to have an abortion, but continue on with these terminal pregnancies, essentially. And then after the second one she had, she started to question, she started to doubt, she started to grieve, all of these things. And all of a sudden the church didn't want to hear from her anymore. She recognized that the only people who were coming up to give testimonies around this issue were people who had happy endings, and hers did not. And that sticks with me to this day, because I think about how truthful that is, that even in church, we want to wrap everything up with a pretty bow to say, look what God did, right? Look what God did. When sometimes there is no happy ending. There is no pretty little bow to wrap up on a story to say, look at this pretty ending. And yet those stories cause us discomfort, but they're very real, I think, for a lot of us in a lot of different ways. So the reality is we need to create space at Open Table Friends and space in our lives with other people for both emotions, and to recognize that just because a person may have a child doesn't erase any pain or trauma that they still may be carrying or holding on to, whether that pain or trauma is public or even private. At some point, I think we also need to wrestle with the way society makes people feel for choosing not to have children, or maybe not trying to have children, or maybe never being able to conceive children. Like these women or these families are less than, which is crazy. And I actually put an expletive in front of crazy that I'm not going to say out loud. Because having or not having a child does not determine one's worth or status, both in society or in the eyes of God or in our church or spiritual spaces or in anyone else's eyes. But yet, as progressive as we think our culture is, that is still a very real stigma that people are carrying around to this day, feeling like they are valued less than because they don't have this one piece to their family, whether by choice or not by choice. And I think that's something we need to talk more about, especially as we visit holidays like Mother's Day and other holidays relating to children and to parents. I even think about my own family that, has been, our son is adopted. People love to go on and on about how wonderful adoption is, right? But in reality, adoption itself is 2 conflicting emotions and realities happening at the exact same time. Because adoption stems from loss. Adoption would not exist if it didn't begin with loss. Loss of biological family, loss of connection. For some people, it's loss of culture. And that loss does not just get erased from memory because a new family is formed. I've had so many people in my own life who just want to focus on this happy emotion of look at this beautiful family that you have created. What a wonderful thing you have done. I hate that phrase. Don't ever tell an adopted family that they have done a wonderful thing. No, they don't. They have not done a wonderful, not they haven't done a wonderful thing, but again, it erases the pain and the loss for that child who has been adopted, all right, of their culture, of their biological family, birth family. We have to be able to hold these two emotions at the same time, as uncomfortable as they might be, because that's reality. This is reality. And we have to be able to be a spiritual community that engages people where they are at, and not demand that they move through it, that they ignore it, that they keep it to themselves, that we have to be a spiritual community that allows these things to coexist at the same time. So again, this series is about a weary world rejoicing, not overlooking the difficult to get to the happy ending, but not also thinking that a happy ending doesn't exist, or that happiness or joy doesn't exist for those who might be weary or suffering or dealing with pain and trauma. So we need to allow space for these competing, it may even seem like conflicting emotions sometime, though I would push back a little bit, because how do we even know what joy is without experiencing pain? One informs the other, so we understand what pain is and what joy is. We wouldn't be able to understand if we cut those two emotions off completely. So the Reverend Cecilia Armstrong writes, as we're thinking about this passage about Zechariah and Elizabeth being given this news, and then again, I promise you, it didn't erase their pain of everything they had suffered to that point. She writes, we can be weary in various ways. We can be weary because of our age. We can be weary because of our waiting. We can be weary because we have faced the same routine for years and seemingly watched nothing change. We can be weary for various reasons, but must we stay weary? Like, do we just sit in that forever? Can we think that there might be hope or joy in the midst of that weariness? Is there a way to experience weariness and insist on the blessed hope or the joy that might be to come? Zechariah's question to Gabriel is directly aligned with this question of weariness and the expectation of hope. In verse 18, Zechariah asks, how will I know that this is so? For I am an old man and my wife is getting on in years. A reasonable question, right? When we are weary, we tend to seek clarity instead of insisting on God's grace to provide for us during the weariness. As a result, Zechariah is kept silent or muted. When Zechariah is before the people who were wondering about his delay in the temple, they realized he had seen a vision. What we notice in the text is that the crowd, having witnessed his inability to speak, does not speak on the issue either. Although no words are exchanged, it seems that weariness has fueled the inability to believe or has offered us an opportunity to lose hope. This is a cry for restoration, since our weariness has shaken and does shake our hope. The request is in the prayer form. The request in prayer form is to restore us, to let God's face shine, and the outcome will be that we may be saved. This request is made 3 times in our text that we read today. A great professor once taught that if something appears 3 times in a sacred text, it must be important. So restoration is important because amid weariness, there may be light at the end of that tunnel. And again, it's not that that light at the end of the tunnel makes all of the darkness or the pain go away. But there may be a way to combat weariness in the current times. There may be a glimpse of hope that just helps sustain us in the weary times and grants us the opportunity in the future to rejoice. So I think about my own infertility journey and like what sustained me in that time. And honestly, for me, it was community. It was having friends who were, not that I rejoiced that they were experiencing infertility, but who were struggling alongside. So I had people who were close to me who uniquely understood this journey. But also what really helped is having friends very close to me who chose not to have children, or maybe chose to just have one child, like we just have one child. So with them, I never felt weird and I never felt alone, even though, again, there was a wide range of emotions. It sustained me during that time. And what's strange is that most of the people who I just mentioned were not part of my church community. Some of them were not even Christian people, were not any kind of people of faith, but they were close to me. Honestly, inside my current church at that time, I felt very alien because my husband and I were the only couple our age, so in our late 20s, early 30s, who did not have children. And so, again, not that anybody made us feel a certain way or said anything to us, but we were literally the only ones. And so I just will never forget that loneliness in that time. That's not an indictment on that community or that church. It's not an indictment even for Open Table Friends. But I do think it helps inform us as we move forward as a spiritual community or even into this Advent season. For people to feel safe to hold any emotion that they are experiencing, that they are welcome here, that they don't have to be rushed through whatever weariness or emotion they may be feeling in this time or in this moment, that their feelings aren't diminished or less than, that we can hold out hope in all of our stories. I think about the story of Jesus and even the story about Elizabeth and Zechariah, how there is hope and there is joy, but acknowledging the pain and the trauma that they lived with are not just magically erased in this one visit from this one angel giving the news of what was about to happen, right? The Bible doesn't talk about that. It doesn't go into depth about all of the things they were thinking and feeling throughout their lives or throughout their pregnancy or throughout John's life. But I think it's safe to say for any of us who have experienced something painful or traumatic, again, we can hold joy and hope and pain and hurt in the same time and in the same place. So as we close out today, I want us to take a few minutes to ponder this question, and I'm going to ask Mark to give us just a minute to think about it. So as Advent begins, what weariness are you carrying right now? What does it look like for you to rejoice when you are weary, if you're even able to? And if you're not, you can be honest about that. That's okay. When have you welcomed joy while simultaneously feeling anxious, afraid, alone, sad, or overwhelmed? And I'll read those questions again one more time. And again, you're more than welcome to leave it in the comments section, but if this is something you need to reflect on yourself, by yourself, you're more than welcome to do so. But it says, as Advent begins, what weariness are you carrying right now? What does it look like for you to rejoice when you are weary? And then finally, when have you welcomed joy while simultaneously feeling anxious, afraid, alone, sad, or overwhelmed? So know you are welcomed, know you are loved, no matter how you are feeling as we start our Advent series here at Open Table Friends.
Wade In by Sarah R. Over time, wind and water will sand down the edges of a stone. For humans, our wind and water is the grief of the world. Stay here long enough, and pieces of you will be pressed upon by life's never-ending stream. It's enough to make you weary. It's enough to make you question. It's enough to make you quiet. And yet, the stream continues. So do not be afraid to stand in that water. Wade in. Soak the hem of your jeans. Drip wet footprints through every room in your house. Let the water stains tell your story. And when your body grows weary of swimming, name the stream. Acknowledge your weariness, for eventually you will pick flowers from the opposite bank. And over again, we'll tell this story. And over again, a weary world will rejoice.
For reading our poem. Thank you, Kirsten, for reading our scripture. Thank you, Liz, for your vulnerability in this really important message during this important time and season in the life of Christian folks. So just thank you all for what you've shared with us today. For those that are contemplating the questions that Liz posed, let's keep that going. Feel free to come back to this comment section and post something if you want to. But also, like Liz said, maybe this is something that you're carrying around privately and don't want to put it on social media. I would encourage you to at least find someone that you can share with, someone who loves you, who's willing to carry your burden with you, or at least share the load. So again, thank you all for being here for our first Sunday in Advent. Just a few reminders as we close our time together this morning. Number one, if you haven't yet filled out our connection card, please go to opentablefriends.org, scroll down, and tap or click on that link there and fill out the connection card. We'd like everyone to do that each and every time you're with us. It just helps us to know, what we're doing, how much we're doing, and all of that kind of stuff. Next, hybrid worship is going to be next Sunday. So that's going to be December 3rd. For those of you that are local to Madison, Ohio, or feel like driving in, we would welcome you to be with us there at Madison Middle School. And of course, for all the rest of us, please join us online. We're going to be together in that way next Sunday. And as a final reminder, our community meeting is going to be on December 10th. And that'll be after our online meeting for worship, and we'll host that on Google Meet. So we'll get more details out to you the week of for that. Be blessed, friends. We will see you next Sunday, if not sooner. Bye.
God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Savior was born on Christmas Day to save us all from Satan's power when we were gone astray. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy. Blessed babe was born and laid within a manger upon this blessed morn, to which his mother Mary did nothing take his scorn. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy. Blessed angel came, and unto certain shepherds brought tidings of the same, how that in Bethlehem was born the Son of God by name. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy. To the Lord sing praises, all you within this place, and with